Hi, we're Quentin Curious Volumes. My name is James, and today is the last day of June, I think, and tomorrow's the first day of July. So I'm going to do a monthly wrap up, monthly what I'm gonna read to be, that the kind of video that you do to say this is what I read, this is what I'm gonna read. Um, I mostly I've been keeping everyone apprised of what I've been reading in June. A lot of things for booktube events, none of which I was officially involved in. I was not a host, but they certainly spurred me to participate. So first of all, and most pleasurable for me was Dune in June. So I read Frank Herbert's Dune for the first time, which led me to say I'm going to get a copy of Dune Messiah. So as I said last week, I ordered one on thriftbooks.com, and it was alleged to be in very good condition, which means it would have an unbroken spine. That's not what I call an unbroken spine. Also, it was ripped from here to here. I repaired with tape, and as I said, I wrote to their customer service and said this is not a very good condition book that I would pay the amount that I paid for it. And they said, okay, we'll send you a replacement. It arrived this week. It's pretty much indistinguishable condition, um, aside from not being ripped, but it is dinged up in a few other ways. So I don't know. At this point, I can keep. Maybe I can clear them out of copies of Dune Messiah. I'll just like accumulate a vast store of this particular book, or maybe I'll just put one in a little free library and read the other and say, all right, I've got the book. Let's move on. Um, Also, for the June on the Range event, I read Zane Grey's Call of the Canyon, which I did a review video of. And I read Louis L'Amour's Showdown on the Hogback, which was certainly a more exciting adventure story, but I don't know. Maybe traditional Westerns just are not the genre for me. Um, let's see. And then for the Summer of Sport event, I read Levels of the Game by John McPhee. I loved this book. This book was great. It's about a tennis match played between Arthur Ashe and Charlie Grebner in 1968. And this was written as a New Yorker, I guess it was maybe an article, um, and it involved, and none of this is actually in the book. These days, the author of such a story would include all the details of how they came to write it, but he had to go and buy the film of it because he saw it on television, and there weren't VCRs or DVDs or anything like that in those days. So he had to go and buy the film of it at great expense, and use that to write this article that um, goes game by game and shot by or serve by serve through the whole game, telling you what happens. Now I will say, so in between the bits where he's describing the tennis match, he also talks about the backstory of these two players. I will say, had I known a little more about tennis and the weird scoring system that it uses before I started reading this, it probably would have gone a little smoother for me. So if you're considering reading Levels of the Game and you're not already up to date on how tennis matches and tennis scoring and games and sets and all that terminology works, he doesn't really give it to you. So read a short explainer article, and that'll help. Um, I have very little interest in tennis, but there's this writer has a certain magic where he can make anything interesting, and just these players, their backstory is fascinating. Less so Charles Grebner. He's the son of a dentist from Cleveland, which is about what you expect for a tennis player. Arthur Ashe um, is just a fascinating figure, and I went down a bit of an internet rabbit hole reading things about Arthur Ashe after this, and he's got a full length biography which I've ordered. So I'm looking forward to reading that maybe for the Summer of Sport for next month because he just did so many unusual things. His father was a fascinating person. Could not read or write, but owned several rental properties and was a police officer in the city of Richmond, and built a house mostly out of things that he accumulated. Just fascinating stuff. There's a couple of bookish notes in here that I wanted to relate to you because. Let's see, 109. Arthur Ashe, at the time of this match, is not a professional tennis player. Neither is Charles Grebner. They're both amateurs, and Arthur Ashe is still in the army, serving as the second lieutenant stationed in at West Point. So there's a description of his his home and or his housing in the officers' barracks, and there's a description of the books that he has in his apartment there. Under his bed is Report of the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders. On a chair near his pillow are Fundamentals in Marketing and the Autobiography of Malcolm X. Along the shelves go Human Sexual Response, Black Power, Emily Post's Etiquette, Contract Bridge for Beginners, Ulysses, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, The Confessions of Nat Turner, The Human Factor in Changing Africa, Paper Line, Mata Hari, Dynamic Speed Reading, The Naked Ape, New York Times Guide to Personal Finance, Marketing Management, Analysis and Planning, A Short History of Religions, Elementary French, Spanish in 3 months, Aussie, English, and U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity and Commission Hearings, New York, 1968. A roommate once cleaned the place up, picked up the clothes, stacked all the rackets, and arranged the books, and Ashe said, "This room is so neat, I can't stand it." So they also tell you about Richard Grebner's reading. So he has The Arrangement, which he says is just for trash, The Effective Executive, and a biography of Richard Nixon. Also Airport and the Pro Quarterback. So you go. Grebner is less verbal than Ashe. Grebner's language is casual and idiomatic. Yeah. So Grebner was the practitioner of Republican tennis. Let's see. There was one more thing I wanted to say. 101. So this was a quote from Arthur Ashe about winning. So he's taken to sort of mentoring some of the West Point. West Point is the military academy of the United States Army. So Ashe is posted there doing some kind of data processing work. But in his free time, he kind of coaches some of the cadets in tennis. And he describes him playing. There's a cadet's good shot goes past him. He shouts, "That's just too tough." But of course, he is realistic with the cadets. He doesn't want to hurt them or waste his own effort, so he always wins. "I'm really happy in this game sometimes," he will admit. "One time I'm really happy is when the last point is over in a tournament and I have won. 5 minutes later, however, it's all gone." Kind of a dark little turn there. But yeah, this is just a really, it's short, but it's really packed full of great detail. So there you go. I learned that Arthur Ashe is also the author of a 3-volume history of sports in America that's mostly out of print. It's being reissued, and only the first volume has come out so far. So I wonder, have any of you read any of Arthur Ashe's 3-volume history of African American sports, I'd like to know if it's worth reading. Certainly has piqued my interest. So also I listened to an audiobook, I mentioned this before, Rebel Girl by Kathleen Hanna of Bikini Kill and La Tigre. Um, you know, there's a lot of rock memoirs. This is a good one. It has some, what's different about it is the scene that she came out of, which was this northwestern do-it-yourself, the Riot Girl scene, which is explicitly feminist punk rock, and Kathleen Hanna just had a very troubling upbringing. Between her parents' kind of instability, mental instability, and physically and emotionally abusive parents and siblings and boyfriends and friends, and just you find yourself just hoping when a new person comes in, like, I hope this person doesn't turn out to be a total scum, and more often than not they do. Anyway, a really interesting listen. Ultimately, Kathleen Hanna is a very inspiring figure, doing things more or less on her own terms, and making a unique life for herself in music. There is a Riot Girl. I described it last time as kind of a musical scene, kind of a movement in punk rock, but it was also an organization, like kind of a mentorship organization for women in alternative music, and a way of, sort of a club where, she spawned chapters of Riot Girl, where, local groups of young women in music would get together and help each other out and talk about their concerns and their issues and opportunities. There's a section where she talks about kind of the racial politics of it, or the lack of it, because punk rock then, as now, largely it was a lot of white women, and she talks about trying to, at a point in the 90s, make it more welcoming to what they now call people of color. And one of the strange things about that discussion is this is taking place in the 1990s, and she's really using terminology and concepts that are from the 2020s. So I don't know how much to. It's not that I don't trust her, but it seems like she's seeing the past through this kind of present day social justice lens, using terms like BIPOC that just were not around in the 1990s. No one said that then. Uh, she describes one of the attendees at one of these meetings saying, I don't see color as being obviously racist on the face of it. In the 1990s, no one would have thought that. Large swaths of people today would not consider that to be racist. They would consider that to be something to aspire to. That's a quibble. It's a minor quibble. There's a lot of great stuff in this book. If you're interested in Kathleen Hanna, you'll want to hear it or read it. Let's see. Also, I read the biography of Eleanor of Aquitaine by Marion Mead from the 1970s. I talked about it a few times. It's really good. It reads kind of like a novel. Eleanor of Aquitaine was Duchess of a large section of France. She married the King of France, or maybe he was the Dauphin at the time. The man who became Louis VII of France accompanied him on the Second Crusade. Did not have any male children for him. They divorced, and she married the heir to the throne of England, a man who became Henry II. So that was a really good one. I'm going to pause for a moment. Hi there. I had to pause for a moment because my wife came home. I had to talk to her. So let me wrap this up. So in the month of July, what am I going to read? Well, I've already started reading Percival Everett's James. I'm about halfway through this. It's, as you probably know, a retelling of Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn from the perspective of the slave character, Jim, who calls himself James. And we learn very early in the book that all the dialect in Huckleberry Finn in the world of this novel is all kind of a put on. It's an act. It is code switching, and in his mind, and when he's talking to other black people, he speaks standard English. He's also taught himself to read, and reads things like Voltaire and John Locke, and has conversations with these figures in his dreams and in his mind. So it's been described kind of as a funny book. It's not terribly funny, except in some sections. It's actually quite brutal and violent in parts. Another thing I'm going to try and read this month is Where Montes Way, the third volume of In Search of Lost Time. This is, well, I've said I'm going to read this whole thing this year. I don't know if I'm going to get through it. This is number 3 of 7. It is the longest of them at 800 something pages. So we'll see. Let's see. I will definitely need to listen to some or have some lighter reading on the side. Will that be one of my numerous copies of Dune Messiah? Possibly. Possibly. It's also Jane Austen July. I think I might reread Sense and Sensibility like everyone else. It was certainly one of the ones I liked best. I put it up there as one of the most enjoyable of her novels. Also, I'm like perpetually 1/3 of the way through a Jane Austen Education by William Deresiewicz, who's a great nonfiction writer and essayist. I have it on my Kindle, and every few months I'll read it in the middle of the night to help me fall asleep again. Not because it's dull, it's pretty good. But yeah, so that's what I have. I hope you are having a good weekend and you have good plans for what you're going to read in July. Let me know. Put something in the comments. Tell me what you're looking forward to reading, which Jane Austen book you're going to read. And let me know if you have any experience with those Arthur Ashe books about the history of sports. Okay, thanks. Bye.